And now we'll go straight into the fireside chat with Dr. Gavin Wood, with Ed Hesse, and Dr. Aeron Buchanan.
Alrighty.
And some beer.
Yeah.
Thanks,
there's
boys.
one on the chair.
All right, how to follow that one? I think I'm gonna have to watch the video a few times and look it up so I can understand everything. Thank you. So,
XCM stands for Cross Communication Protocol.
So this is the first time that Aeron is joining us. So these three gentlemen are esteemed advisors and co-founders of the first fund, and advisors and lead investors along with us in the second fund. Lots happened in a year since we've gotten started. A lot of content today. Let's start off with, so the theme of the fund is adoption. And we heard about a lot of things today about adoption. What are you guys, any of you most excited about? What gets us to real adoption?
No, I was just going to say that before we move on, I think something that struck me is that we're kind of quite advanced in the ecosystem in the sense that we've spent today talking about lots of things that real world people can use Web3, the services that you all out in the audience are generating, and this is part of the excitement and the stuff we're doing. But I think, Gav, you going through the stuff that you're working on really emphasizes the importance of the foundations, because in general, in our ecosystem, with regulations aside, had it relatively easy technologically. But earthquakes will come, and when they do, we need good foundations. And I think this is something in many ecosystems, when it comes to particular blockchain ecosystems, is totally overlooked. And I think I think it's worth emphasizing the foundational work that's going on in Polkadot to really strengthen the underlying system, the underlying blockchain, so that when those earthquakes do come, all just carries on smoothly.
I think the biggest kind of message between the lines of Gav's presentation was that he's trying to make himself redundant. So it's like with the fellowship, with everything else, so that if something happens to parity, this thing can maintain itself and develops further without him needing to be there. Yeah, this is.
It's really. I mean, I put it in the word, right? Resilience. This must be resilient to all potential, or as many potential circumstances that the world might suffer as possible. And yeah, okay, one of them is that, I get hit by a bus. Yeah, but it's not about me assuming that I'm going to get hit by a bus. It's simply making sure that Polkadot does not depend on any particular element of the world staying the same, because the reality is the world will change.
Yeah, maybe for me, kind of this a signal that adoption is accelerating is just the fact, that there is powers in the world that try to shut this down. We see this in the US right now. I mean, we at a stage where Web3 is being not only noticed, but it's there is a lot of forces that try to shut it down, and that is a compliment. It means something. Yeah? And obviously, the other fact of adoption is seeing also the difference in this room to the last year, which is, and also at this stage, the quality of applications we see on the change, the gaming sector, the music sector, the whole entertainment sector coming into this space, which is unbelievable. And so this is, well, you probably know that we're currently in a, let's say, in a situation in the market which is very bear-like. So it's actually a good time to buy right now. So.
Not financial advice.
No financial advice. Mark gives financial advices. We don't give financial advices. No, but it's for many of the teams, it's a very depressing time. And which is on the other side a time of opportunity. But so we had a meeting here with a lot of founders, and this is also something for me that distinguishes our network, Polkadot, very much from other networks. Is we have a very strong kind of collaboration between the teams. And so in this meeting, it was visible. You could feel it. There is depression right now because prices are low, the runways are short and so forth. And everyone is really fighting right now. And so what I can say, from the last 9 years or from 10 years in this space is the winners, and in 18, at the peak in 18, and then in 19, as the market crashed, we saw 90% of the companies vanish at that time, and it will happen. It's happening right now as well, And but the teams that survived were those teams that just keep building, just keep the patience, and go through the cycle, and it will come. And you will see in the next few months, already talking to to Robbie from Animoca, he said there is a feeling already in the last few months it started to go up again. It feels like we touched bottom, and there is new NFTs being minted, and there is a lot of more activities already coming up now. And so I feel like now we have the attention of the world. We have the attention of the biggest brands now, and for me this is actually one of the most exciting times. I feel like now in the next 3 years we will have the biggest breakthrough. Now the world is starting to exit into our world, and it's not us exiting into the old world. So for me, I couldn't be more pumped as it is right now, and specifically seeing the quality of discussions as well here in the room and on the panels around the applications.
Yeah, I would just add, there's a tipping point, and it's coming. And Giotto, who's in this room, likes to use the example. At a certain point, not that long ago, people said, well, why would I text somebody when I can call them? And then all of a sudden, it switched. And well, why would I call someone when I can text them? And that's the moment that we're going to have. Why would I use this centralized partner where I could just go direct, where I could just use something on blockchain?
Yeah, that's it. And we have a setup here where, as we have more people doing more good stuff, as you develop and deploy all the things that you're working on, we have a positive feedback effect, and the ecosystem just grows. And with not having to worry about the underlying technology, because, as Gav pointed out, it's taking care of that important work, but it's being done. You can concentrate on delivering service. And the more services there are, the more they can interact, and the more other services will be attracted to join the ecosystem.
I mean, for me it seems the answer is simply in delivering benefit. It's like, you want people to use your stuff, make it worth their while. I don't see any magic fairy dust here. It's like, you want give them some benefit. Now there are certain technical pieces of the puzzle, certain financial pieces of puzzles, but I think the biggest one for me is just about creating services that people actually need.
Absolutely, and we saw, this year has had quite a few events, negative events around the term crypto and blockchain. with big failures. But these failures actually were not failures of the crypto or of the blockchain. They were the failures of the humans and the systems and good old-fashioned fraud. And if you look at it, actually the smart contracts paid out, the DeFi worked, those lenders got paid back, where the traditional lenders, they're still waiting for their money, and God knows how long it's going to take.
Well, forever, quite a few of them.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I think it was a necessary and healthy washout. It was just pure out scams that happened, you know, and washing that out, you know, also triggers more regulation, which is needed. You know, it's like I'm not saying that we are against regulation. We are for regulation, you know, but not limiting the freedom, you know, and that is a very fine line, you know.
Very fine indeed. And I, you know, if you listen to some of the conversations that are happening amongst the regulators and the people that inform the regulators, there are some, I would say, quite concerning currents in those conversations, which isn't to say that's what the regulation will become. There are obviously people that are saying sensible things as well, but we have to be wary that this is it's technology that is disruptive to existing power structures, right? You know, Satoshi knew this when he put the little epigram about the banking crisis in the Genesis block for Bitcoin. This was meant to disrupt established authorities. Right? The technology was known to do that. And, you know, surprise, surprise, established authorities are sort of coming and having a look at it and thinking, we might need to make this a bit more pliant to our desires. And as I said in the chat, the desires are getting, they're increasing. Like this, you know, one of the more recent points to make is, you know, concerning the war, is this financial sort of, maybe not quite weapon of mass destruction, but sort of weapon of substantial destruction, which is effectively limiting trade, but indirect trade that companies can do with regards to supplying advanced advanced silicon to firms that might be, you know, helping with the Russian war effort. Now, this is a you know, a more far-reaching part of the sanctions regime than has happened before. It's considered quite a sophisticated and powerful weapon, but it's only sophisticated and powerful as long as the current financial establishment, the USD-centric financial establishment, exists, and this order is eroding. And what takes its place is, well, we'll have to see. But the point of the matter is that the West is doing everything it can to utilize the USD-centric world of trade and finance, and one of the ways that the USD-centric world of trade and finance will or can at least be eroded is cryptocurrency, is this very technology that we are developing. This was identified by the Financial Action Task Force as a means of where to point regulation crosshairs at next. And what I think we've seen so far in terms of regulation is pretty tame compared to what could ultimately be coming in quite possibly the next 5 years. We could see firms that develop the very technology that Polkadot is reliant upon be made illegal, or at least heavily regulated, as heavily regulated as banks and the defense industry.
You could see that in the Argentina bailout offer from the IMF already, where they said, okay, we you know, this is an offer to bail out of what, 60 billion or 59 billion, and one of the conditions was, you know, if there is no crypto activity. And that was a very clear message, you know. On the other side, you know, as there is obviously this currency war going on, you know, between the West and the East, and crypto is also one alternative. There is, you know, what we see more and more is that there is a lot of small countries, you know, that you know, were dependent on World Bank, IMF, and all sorts of IFES funding, are opening up much more to crypto sector, or you know, people coming generally from this sector, just, you know, and doing very favorable conditions to attract this talent and investments from the sector. And so there is you know, there is not only fights, but you know, there is a big divide in the world where we see that there is really now an attention by the small countries to create situations that attract founders and teams, you know, to come to the small countries because they have more favorable situations and bring a lot of money, investments into the country. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting how this will shape up. I think for sure the technology creates winners and losers, like any substantial technology. And I think it has a role to play in the this kind of reformulation of world order that we are seeing play out.
I mean, you know, just to give you an example, I think I touched upon it last year. So the Polkadot treasury is now at something, what, 250, 300 million, some of this number, and price is somewhere at $6 or something like this. And peak price at the last bull market was something $55, and so roughly a 10x. So it was 3 billion in the treasury. And you know, assuming the next bull market might play out as the last bull market, you know, we might see a treasury having, you know, 10, 20, 30 billion. What that means, you know, with such an open governance model is it opens incredible possibilities. It opens possibilities to offer loans to governments, to small governments, in competition to World Bank and IFES, obviously at the conditions that favor network participants, you know, to make the country attractive to go there and live there. So, you know, there is tectonic shifts happening in the next 3 years that we see coming, and it's accelerating. Yeah.
That's all really like super high level and big picture. If you'll allow me to take it down a little bit and talk a little bit about, you know, today and a bit about yesterday, and Ed was there. So as he mentioned, we had a meeting with founders from the Polkadot ecosystem to address issues that everybody's facing under the current markets, one of which includes, so the design of Polkadot is such that it encourages, or not requires, but encourages collaboration, that very specific business cases can be built as parachains and as applications that can seamlessly and securely use functions from others within the system. And one of the challenges is that it's still very early and not all of the functionality is built out yet. So teams are largely either have to wait for someone else or see that they build it themselves because they don't want to wait for someone else. What do you how can we find a solution to that? If there is one, other than just taking more time and letting stuff be built.
I mean, in this meeting, what we found is, you know, one of the problems, I mean, there are several set of problems, and some are easier to solve than others. And one is communication, you know, and to be honest, you know, coming from Ethereum, you know, it's like there is no on-chain governance. There is a very opaque, you know, process how to do upgrades and so forth. And as you know, compared to that, as Polkadot was launched, there was so many upgrades. So, and you know, a sign for a healthy system is, you know, a system is only healthy or resilient as, you know, if there is an ability to upgrade fast, you know. And So as we were discussing between the teams, it was all about communication, just communication between the teams. And I haven't seen something similar in other networks, and where there is such a close collaboration, cross collaboration between the teams. So this is one. Another problem is obviously right now bear market is liquidity. But I founded EnergyWeb and helped many other founders launch tokens and their systems. And we have been working a lot with market makers and service providers out there, and which is also a very difficult process. It's a very kind of you don't really know what's happening, and in this world if you have these providers. So we launched our own service providers with Dark Forest just a few months ago, and so to help on the liquidity side and to bring it to all the markets to make this much more accessible. So this company is growing at breakneck speed, and yeah, what else?
I mean, in many respects, as you said, Mark, it boils down to time or money, or some kind of trade-off. But I think from certainly from the Web3 Foundation's point of view, we've been helping as much as possible with grants and what's the word? There's a word that my hands are trying to convey here.
Public funding?
No, not corralling, shepherding, but
stewarding.
Stewarding, that's the word. You can see my hands stewarding. Because of course we are represented here a open ecosystem, so everyone. But it still takes time and effort and coordination to do that. And as that goes on chain, which will be happening soon, the bandwidth on the amount of grants and projects that can be funded increases. So that I think that's something that's only going to improve, quite quickly now. And communication, is another one. And the allowing time for projects to talk to each other, communities to work out, okay, so what are the business primitives, the service primitives that need to be there, to allow economies of scale, etc. And of course, that changes over time as we learn, okay, what is important, what isn't important, what needs to be fast, what doesn't need to be fast. That all evolves with the technology and the services that are being built. So I think as experience happens and more can happen on chain, we're just going to see a acceleration in that direction.
I mean, to give you an analogy, there is what I don't know exactly, but it was somewhere around 500 teams building on Polkadot, and try to manage or shepherd 500 teams all around the globe in different languages. It's open governance is one of the tools to bring this on chain, and it's in that sense what is being built here is very similar to a government, to an open government that has no borders, and it's quite a big challenge. And just looking at this, at the pace how this system evolved, to compare it how democracy evolved over the last 100 years to the speed as the governance and everything evolved in Polkadot and Kusama, it's like there is at least 100x improvement in speed of the system getting healthier and better and better and better compared to how humanity or democracy evolved. So looking at that incredible pace that is happening here 24/7, every day, there is no stop, there is no weekend, nothing. It's like, I'm very curious how that's going to look in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's two elements to this. There's the technical element of getting sort of chains to communicate in an effective way. And then there's a more sort of socio-technical element, essentially like a means of getting teams to agree on a shared language that they can use to make their applications work across the parachain, relay chain void without let's say, leaking abstractions between the chains. Because I mean, one of the great things about having your own chain is you get to dictate the rules, right? And as soon as you now have to obey the other guy's rules, you kind of lost a lot of the value of having your own chain. So this shared language, XCM in Polkadot's case, evolves, and there are ideas to sort of maybe make it or help it evolve faster that are still in their infancy at present. But one of the ways to facilitate this is typical technical governance protocols, RFCs, prototyping, meritocratic voting bodies. And these are things that we are moving towards in the Polkadot technical realm, right? Now the other element is the purely technical element, which is how can we achieve it sort of today? And XCM is still is pretty general purpose in that it does contain a particular facility to allow you to effectively pretend to be an account holder on the chain that you want to deal with. So anything that anyone who is transacting on that chain would be able to do, in principle, a blockchain can also do, right? And this means that, for example, it allows blockchains like Akala to implement liquid staking because they can pretend to be a staker on the relay chain and use that staking stuff. The XCM doesn't understand staking, but XCM provides you with this kind of trapdoor that lets you pretend to be just a random guy with an account. Yeah, it lets the chain pretend to be a random guy with an account. So this is one good thing. But another, a very important thing is also to be able to query the chain, right? So one chain that wants to deal with another chain, okay, it can pretend to be a random guy and send a transaction over and know that it will be executed sooner or later. But oftentimes that isn't enough. They need to be able to get information back about what's going on in the chain. The sort of thing that you might use a blockchain explorer for, right? Check your balance or whatever else. This isn't really done with XCM, because XCM is all about having instructions, having the chain actually service you, right? It's doing something. It's waiting on you, right? And if you're going to be waited upon, that means you have to pay the waiter to wait upon you, right? There's transaction fees involved. This is problematic. It's expensive. It ties up resources. Much better is if you just look at the menu rather than have the waiter explain the menu to you. Yeah. If you have the waiter explain the menu to you, you have to pay. The restaurant has to pay the waiter to waste their time reading the menu out or reciting it from. And I've been to restaurants like this. You feel very looked after, but you also feel it's a bit of a waste of this guy's time when they could just give you a bit of paper, And so, what's the equivalent in XCM of just giving the guy a bit of paper? Well, the equivalent is XEQ. Right, which is the cross-chain query language. What this allows, this is basically if you've seen Star Trek, you might be familiar with this thing called the Universal Translator. And basically it allowed Captain Kirk to land on some random alien planet, and they'd speak the random alien planet language, but Captain Kirk would hear English, right? It's kind of a universal translator for blockchains. So the blockchain has its own way of, storing the balance. However it stores it, it doesn't always get stored in the same format. It might have other stuff prepended to it or appended after it or whatever else. And what it allows is the chain to basically have this kind of dictionary or like general translation book that we call in the tech circles metadata. And it allows, given this translation, this dictionary, it allows any chain to be able to make a query in a language they understand, like kind of XEQ, and get back an answer that they understand as well. It allows and there's just like this magic universal translator going on that is the magic that XEQ delivers. So this is one of the ways that we're sort of looking towards facilitating the interoperability of chains without necessarily waiting for all of the technical dialogue and agreements, governance to happen and develop the XCM language to the point that is necessary.
So now I'm going to ask a question that I don't know the answer to, and you're probably the wrong person to address it to. When will this be presented in a way that someone like me can use it?
Well, I mean, the idea is that someone like you doesn't use it, right?
Right.
It's kind of like saying, well, when's UDP going to be presented to in such a way that you can use it? Well, you never use UDP, right? I mean,
I don't even know what it
stuff
is.
that uses UDP, precisely, right? You use stuff that uses UDP, or TCP, or TCP/IP. Maybe you heard of that?
Certainly.
All right. So UDP is like a kind of lower level version of that, okay? But if you play video games, they're going to use UDP, right?
Yeah, it's exactly like John says. You will not feel it, you know. So, just to translate what Gav said, you know, so we're improving the communication between the teams.
But it's about providing facilities to teams so they can provide benefits to people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So with that, we don't want to take too much time away from the academy, which we had to swap for this. I'd like to open it up for questions, if anyone's brave enough.
Won't AI rapidly increase the speed in which you can develop XEQ?
I fear not. I'm still like, last time I tried to log into Chat GPT and like in my Visual Studio Code and have it make some code for me, it was like too many connections, don't have enough server space, try again in a day. I don't know. I've tried using it a bit. It seems to me it's not. It's like kind of. ChatGPT knows how to speak English, great, and it kind of knows how to make something that looks like. Oh, it knows how to speak Rust. Okay, good. But it doesn't understand. It's a little bit like, actually, there's a great book that I recommend everybody read. It's so good. Surely You're Joking, Mr. Feynman. Anyone read it? Yeah, all right. Excellent. There's a bit in the book that explains the cargo cult, right? Now this is this dates back to post World War II. There was an island in the South Pacific, I believe, of strategic utility during the war that America used. In order to keep the local, they built a little runway, like an airstrip on their little base. And to keep the locals happy, they used to airdrop food. Locals would find these parcels, have food inside, awesome. We leave these guys alone. Now, they associated the food deliveries with a guy in the what do you call it, the watchtower thing of the airstrip, right? The
Radio tower.
Yeah. And they, when the war ended, America didn't have any use for the island anymore, so the base just got deserted. The food deliveries stopped coming, and the people were a bit upset at the lack of food deliveries. So, you know, of course, what's the first thing they do? Well, they think, well, there was always a person in this control tower when the food deliveries came, so we need to put a thing in the control tower that looks like a person. So they make an effigy, a straw man, and they put it in the control tower, and then they wait for the food deliveries to come. So this is a cargo cult, right? This is where the name cargo cult comes from. It feels a little similar. I fear that with ChatGPT, at the point that it understands reality, okay, it's kind of a cargo cult understanding of reality. It understands some superficial aspects. You ask it to produce a program that, for example, implements a decentralized exchange. It'll produce something that kind of, at the very, very first view, looks like it might do something like that. And it certainly looks like syntactically correct Rust. But in reality, it doesn't make any kind of sense when you spend more than 15 seconds actually reading it. So I think it's great for stuff which needs to be syntactically correct and has to look kind of about right within 15 seconds, or for no more than 15 seconds. But anything deeper than that, anything that needs a deeper insight than that, it's really, as far as I can tell, pretty useless.
Yeah, I'll just quickly follow my kind of summary in this. So all of this AI stuff, it sucks in huge amounts of human-generated content, mainly from the internet, including code and whatnot. But all it can do is interpolate that. So it generates things that might be, a little bit novel because they're a new melding of what already exists. But it's within the gamut of the stuff that it has taken in. So if you asked it specifically for something that, is an input, then obviously it can just regurgitate that, fine. But, just like for artists using it, or, I want the intro to Friends, but in a folk style. Yeah, it can do that. That's great. But is it going to generate new songs? Is it going to generate new art? No. We look to humans to generate, because that's an expertise that is outside the gamut. And it's the same with programming. So sure, it's going to become a great helper tool, like a super paperclip, from the old Word days, right? But, so a tool for low-level stuff. But when it comes to really hardcore, border-defining code, like the stuff that, Gav and the developers are generating, no, that's a new frontier of coding, and ChatGPT can't, it doesn't even understand, never mind get to a point where it can help.
With that,
I think there was a question. Yeah.
okay.
Hi, thank you. A lot of discussion today about identity and data and ownership, but most of it either had to do with when we're talking around financial aspects or banking aspects, but to me it seems that one of the more complicated one has to do around healthcare, right? Because it's our data, which has to do sort of with us. We don't know enough information and we always rely on a doctor. How can sort of everything that we're building in this ecosystem help us to take back ownership of our health data, which is being quite manipulated at this time? And what's your favorite crypto kid?
Yeah, this is something that's I've been loosely pondering for several years. Healthcare was one of these first sort of proposed use cases for Ethereum. Okay, so what's the ideal thing? Ideal thing is I have some sort of implant that has my information, all my health information on me, that is magically readable by by any medical professional who is trying to help me live, right? I don't want like I don't know I don't want some like kind of dodgy bad doctor, some evil doctor to come and like read my thing and say, oh well, I'm allergic to pollen, therefore I'm going to inject a huge amount of pollen into him and kill him, right? I don't want that doctor to be able to read my medical records, but I want the good doctors to be able to read them. So we're already in this kind of like vague problem space, right? But notionally, if we can simplify it to, I want to carry around my information with me and kind of be able to give permission to someone. Let's assume for now I'm conscious. Then I think it's relatively solvable. We have technical solutions that facilitate this, basically allow you to store information in the cloud and have rules-based means of giving permission to access that information to specific key holders, specific individuals. The Parity actually built this many years ago. Sadly, didn't really get used beyond a tech demo that we gave. But it's called the Decentralized Secret Store. And it uses some pretty advanced cryptographic techniques to allow effectively a multi-party system to co-guard a bunch of secret information. You can put secret information into the system, and you can specify by virtue of a blockchain that all these co-guards have access to, and they may even be the validators of that chain. We allow them to, they are together, they can facilitate, according to the chain, the re-encryption of the information to some given destination that the chain can decide. So what we can start conceiving of is a blockchain that has some sort of medical reputation system that records which keys are associated with which affiliated medical professionals. We can allow the possibility of an individual storing their information, their medical information, having their medical information appended to, mutated and added to on the blockchain into the secret store, and allowing a basic rule that is, if you're a medical professional, maybe if you're like two medical professionals, maybe there has to be some sort of pairing, then you can request access to someone's information. And maybe there's some like emergency override that you can opt into that basically means they can always do it, and maybe otherwise you need to actually give specific consent by virtue of, I don't know, a mobile phone thing or a watch or a ring or something that you have on you that would control this key. Maybe even just a password. This is, already the technology exists that we can do this. Now I see this, I think healthcare is an interesting one because actually confidentiality matters a lot, but I see this as being a very general problem to solve. Like when I go to the hairdresser, if I move to a different hairdresser, I would quite like them to know what I've told all the previous hairdressers, rather than having to regurgitate it every time, right? The same with...
I won't know what to tell them.
And maybe, maybe the hairdresser says, well, when I give this guy a shave, it tends to bleed, and you've got to be like super careful, or you've got to use, I don't know, some particular thing on the skin in order to prevent it from bleeding or clean it up after, I don't know. But, there's a lot of information from service providers that just gets lost. And this is one of the sticky effects of service provision. You kind of want to stay with that service provider because they know you, and they know all the secrets, right? They've been working with you. But if you're in a situation where either you do want to change for whatever reason, or you have to change because you're moving city or moving country, or you just move around a lot, then you're kind of stuck. And it's this sort of traditional system really doesn't serve you very well.
I think funnily I had just a similar discussion an hour ago. I don't know. I think it would be good if you connect to Ahmed. Ahmed, if you want to raise your hand, they have a healthcare company that has a lot of data. So communications between the teams, right?
All right, so we're out of time. So please give a hand for our panel.
Thank you very much.